Hi there, and welcome to A Cup of Poetry. This week, poet Fran Richey is with us in the studio to introduce and read from her Penguin book, The Warrior, a mother's story of a son at war.
My name is Fran Richey, and I wrote The Warrior, this collection of poetry, during a time when my son was in Iraq. He was a West Point grad, a Green Beret, and part of a military culture that I didn't understand. I grew up in the 60s during the Vietnam War, and I was very much against that war. And I was against going into Iraq, and so it was very hard for me to understand what he was going through and also what motivated him, why he wanted that life, although I know that he did believe in honor and country, and that's why he went to West Point. So these poems were really an exploration of what I went through, what my thoughts and feelings were while he served. And so I'm going to read you a few poems from the book. And I do want to say that through the poems, later on, after he read these poems when he came back from Iraq, and he'd been back over a year, the poems themselves actually helped us to start talking. So we are now, we are still, I am liberal, he is conservative, but we can talk about it and not leave the table angry. So I'm going to read a poem called The Aztec Empire. And this poem comes from a trip that I made to the Guggenheim Museum in 2004, actually right after my son Ben left for Iraq. And the exhibit itself was really beautiful. It was artifacts from the Aztec Empire. But as I went through the different objects, looked at the different objects, I realized that they were all about war and killing, and so this poem came from that time. The Aztec Empire, the Guggenheim, 2004. Listen, dearie, there is no world without war. An unfamiliar voice in my head. I stand at the beginning, before stone-plumed serpent Quetzalcoatl, celestial being of the dawning east, wind and breath. Beautiful, if beauty can live where young men die for kings. Does the voice mean there can only be a world if there is killing? My son is in Iraq. I see him in the faces of soldiers on the news, in the Times. The voice in my mind, like the tune of a song I hate but can't forget, doesn't care about the dark circles around their eyes or about the black alcove, a stone altar shaped like a bridge, a slave bent backwards so the priest could slide a flint knife into his ribs, extract his beating heart, a sacrifice for an Aztec god. The blood caught in this exquisite bowl behind glass. Red, white, black, glyphs of gold, the eye of night. The warriors drank from it too, for land, for women. They used blood the way we use money to keep their world going. Across the spiraled ramp, an eagle warrior, a man's face shadowed inside a beaked helmet. Slightly bent at the waist, he could be bowing, if not for the meanness of his costume. Talons jut from his knees, the stucco edges of ceremonial feathers spike at his shoulders. Before he was a warrior, he was a boy. Before he drank blood, he drank milk. So what, says the voice, we're all going to die. Who are we to judge? But I'm dizzy, I reply. Something knocked loose inside my inner ear. Or perhaps it was the dark body of the snake. I walked its coil to the cross of its destroyer. I had to place my back against a wall to keep from falling.
Check back next week for another cup of poetry.